And before we gavel in this morning, members, we have a special guest. We have Miss Lean Lewis, an artist from Denver, Colorado, who will sing a spiritual anthem. Lift every voice and sing.
Oh
Thank you very much to Mr. James and for Ms. Lewis for their words this morning. With that, the House will come to order. Everyone in the chamber, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance that will be given by our very own Representative Tim Geithner.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Shebel, please call the roll.
Representatives Mabile, Bacon, Baisley, Benavides, Burnett. Is Rep. Burnett here too? Representative Burnett? There she is. Byrd, Bockenfeld, Basenecker, Bradfield, Caraveo, Carver. Oh, Carver's excused. Representative Carver's excused. Catlin, Cutter, Doherty, Duran. Is Duran on? Excused. Rep. Duran is excused. Esgar. Hi.
She gets double. That's double.
Aw.
Double drinks.
Exum.
Morning, sir.
Froelich. I see her. Representative Froelich. Geithner. Gonzalez Gutierrez. Gray. Hanks. Herod. Holtorf. Hooten. Judah. She's here. Kennedy. Kip. Representative Kip. She's here. There he is. Larson. Lontine. Luck. Lynch. McCluskey. McCormick. McKean. McLaughlin. Michael Sinjane.
Present.
Mullica. Neville. Rep. Neville is excused. Ortiz.
Here.
Pelton. Pico.
Here.
Ransom. Representative Ransom? Oh. Rich. Ricks. Ricks is here. Oh yeah, we talked to her. Roberts. Sandridge. Sirota. And Representative Sirota. Snyder. Soper. He wasn't. He was excused yesterday, but.
Excused.
Rep. Soper's excused. Sullivan. Tipper. Titone. Valdez A. Valdez D.
Here.
Van Beber. Van Winkle.
Here.
Weissman. Will. Williams.
Here.
Woodrow. Woog. Young. And Mr. Speaker.
Present. With 60 present, 60 present, 4 excused, and 1 vacancy, we have a quorum. Representative Woog.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Journal of Thursday, January 13th, 2022 be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk.
Thank you, Representative Woog. Members, you have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That was really good. Oh, that was good, David. Or Representative Ortiz, thanks for that. All those opposed say no.
No.
Oh, I couldn't hear anything up here. Obviously, the ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Announcements and introductions. Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a very important introduction. I'd like to introduce you all to Marlo. What's happened for you? She loves when people applaud, so. There you go. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Madam Majority Leader. Representative Pelton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And that is a tough one to follow, but just a reminder, Tuesday morning at 7:30, downstairs 109, we will have Bible study. We'll have something to eat and fill your soul. So see you next Tuesday.
Thank you, Representative Pelton. Members, let's keep it down just a little bit so we can hear announcements and introductions. Representative McCormick and Representative Catlin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good morning, everyone. I'm here to remind you, along with Representative Catlin. How are you doing this morning, Representative Catlin?
I'm good, thanks.
Well, I'm a little sad, actually. I have yet to put anything in my envelope for the National Western Stock Show Junior Livestock Sale. So, oh, wow, look at this. People are coming out of the woodwork. Thank you, and look, thank you all very, very much. I wanted to bring down this handsome Hereford for you all to see. Just as an example of what you may help these young people that are bringing their prize livestock to auction next Friday night. Woo! So you too can participate and make these young people feel so good about what they've worked so hard to do all year. So, Rep. Catlin.
Thank you.
Representative Catlin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's an honor to serve with you again today.
Honor to serve with you too, Representative Catlin.
Thank you. Well, folks, she laid the pitch on you. This is a big deal, and it's a big enough deal that I'm going to let some of my compatriots here, they brought money down, some of yours did, so I figured what I should have to do is show you that I will too. Even though it looks like monopoly money, it is mine. And I will put in $100 towards this today. Anyway, it's a big deal. Thank you very much. I want you to remember this is an opportunity for the state of Colorado to look back at the kids of Colorado and of the Western region and say you are important. We want you to succeed. This is part of that Colorado thing of us succeeding. This is us showing the rest of the nation that we do lead. We do take care of these young people, and they are important to us. This is a good way to stay affordable in the state of Colorado is donate. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you both, Representative McCormick and Representative Catlin. Representative Holtorf, sure.
Mr. Speaker, it's a pleasure to serve with you and all of my colleagues in this chamber. I just want to make a very short comment. For those young people that are in 4-H and FFA all across Colorado and New Mexico, Kansas, Wyoming, Nebraska, They consider the National Western Stock Show the Super Bowl of livestock showing. So what you're doing is contributing to the Super Bowl, and we want Texas to be put on notice. The National Western Stock Show, when it gets done with its revitalization, will outdo the Fort Worth stockyards 100-fold. And we're going to take it to the Texans, and we're going to take it and show them that Colorado is the center of the universe in the livestock industry.
Yeah. Here, 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 here. Okay, Representative Burnett, Gray, Amable. Members, please give your attention to Representative Burnett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This morning, we want to take a moment to recognize every first responder who worked tirelessly during the Marshall Fire. Boulder County Sheriff Pele, his officers worked tirelessly to ensure the safety of thousands of residents alongside the firefighters from across the state and the country and the county. Louisville Police Chief Hayes worked diligently to protect his community even after tragically losing his home. The rapid emergency response effort demonstrated our first responders' incredible dedication to protecting and serving our communities. Thank you, first responders, for your bravery. Your organized and heroic response undoubtedly saved thousands of lives, and we are truly grateful. Recovery happens when communities come together, work together to rebuild. Boulder County's recovery is owed to the countless, many, who are working to pick up the pieces. Nonprofits, including Sister Carmen, community foundations serving Boulder County, ARC, the American Red Cross, YMCA of the Rockies, and several local church groups who provided the comforts of home and a warm meal to those who lost everything. IEBW and other union-strong workers who toiled away in freezing, dangerous conditions to get power and gas back online. And countless organizers and individuals, many of whom I hold close to my heart, stepped up in ways they knew how, by being a neighbor to those who are in need. Thank you for your persistence, even when the days were dark and cold. My heart goes out to everyone who was displaced by the Marshall Fire. Know that I and all of us are going to be there for you in the long run as we rebuild. I think we're all learning that this recovery is going to be longer and harder than any of us could have ever imagined, but hope is on the horizon. We've seen impressive recovery efforts along the way, and the outpouring of support across the state, the country, and around the world as an indicator of the love and resilience in our community. But this is just the start. Our priority is building back smarter, stronger, while committing to the needs of our community. Due to our changing climate and worsening fire seasons, we cannot be complacent. Tragically, I know this will not be the last time our communities deal with a scourge of wildfires. My colleagues and I are determined to craft a recovery that will foster more opportunities for everyone while building back a stronger community in the process. We are here for the long run and prepared to do what it takes to better prepare our state for the wildfire challenges of tomorrow. We're ready with open minds and open hearts to support the community in any way we can, and I want to thank you all for the kindness and support that you have all already shown our hometowns, and I ask that you keep us in our hearts. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Burnett. Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The town of Superior that I represent was founded in 1896 as a coal mining town. And it's grown into being more of a suburban community where most of the folks live, but the old town Superior has stood for over a century, and it's gone. All of Old Town Superior burned to the ground. All that history, all of those properties burned, and we lost all of it. And that community is very tightly knit around that history. You know, I'll tell you one quick story to try to understand it, because that's also where Town Hall is. Town Hall's on that side of there's more newer suburban developments on the eastern side. The western side was Old Town, and that's where Town Hall was too. And I was talking to the mayor pro tem, because when you're a legislator, you feel powerless sometimes, because I don't have anybody to order into an emergency center. Like I don't have things to do, but I called talking to the mayor pro tem, and I said, like, what do you need? Like, is there anything I can do? What do you need? And he's like, well, and I don't know if y'all remember the timeline, but the fire happened on one day, and there was a snowstorm the next day. And he's like, well, our snowplow's all burned, and it's going to snow tomorrow. And thanks to the efforts of Boulder County and CDOT here in the state, we made some phone calls and made sure that the folks who still had homes and wanted to go back into their homes and see what was left of them had a chance to get back in. And that's the kind of support that Representative Burnett was talking about. The folks from across the state came in and said, like, how can we help? What can we do? And we're so grateful for that, because this is, I mean, we lost 100 years of history in my district, in the town of Superior. Like, we lost 100 years of history, and the notice was like an hour to half an hour ahead of time. Like, folks didn't get to go and pull out their valuables or that sort of thing. We don't prepare for this sort of thing generally in the suburbs, right? So people weren't expecting it, and people have lost so much. They've lost family heirlooms, they've lost their actual homes and shelter. Folks, we fortunately, again, by heroic efforts, the loss of life was minimal, but it existed, it has happened, and we remember the lives of the folks that we lost. But also for a lot of folks, it's like, not only did I lose my house, not only did I lose all of my heirlooms, there are a lot of folks who, for them, their pets are a part of their life, right? And they weren't at home at the time, and they're gone. And so we can't replace that. There's nothing we can do in this chamber to give back people what they lost. But what we can do is try to get them back in their community as quickly as we can. Because for a lot of the families that I've talked to, the logistics are really hard. You're sleeping in your sister's basement, in Lakewood, even though you're from Superior. You're hanging out you're sleeping on a friend's couch, right? And that's where you're living right now. But your kids still go to school in the same school. And they're facing these torture decisions. Some people are having to live really far away because we lost over 1,000 homes. But it's really hard to look your kid in the eye and say, look, you lost your house, you lost your room, all of your things are gone, and also we're going to try to put you in a different school and you're going to lose your friends also. Like, nobody's actually doing that, but the burden it's putting on people's families where they have to then, you used to have a 10-minute commute to drop off your kids, now you've got a 45-minute commute to drop off your kids. And so we don't know the answers yet. There's a task force that's getting together to try to work on how can we rebuild as fast as possible. But for the families who are affected, it's really important. It is incredibly important to rebuild as fast as possible because they don't want to be displaced. They didn't ask to be displaced. And I don't have any ask for folks in this chamber right now, but I may later, to try to help people get back into, they're never going to get back what they lost, but to be able to get back into their community as quickly as possible. And I thank you for all the support that everybody has offered me and has offered to my community as a result of this fire. So thanks a lot.
Representative Mobley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I'll be short because I'm always short. I live in Boulder. I live in the western part of Boulder, right up against the foothills, and I have an expectation that fires are going to happen near me, and that one day that might happen where I live. But I think if you lived in Louisville or if you lived in Superior, you didn't have that expectation. So not only have people lost their homes, their community, their pets, their daily routines, but they've also lost their sense of safety. And that is a pretty profound loss. And I think that we all here in this chamber need to do everything we can to make sure that people get that sense of safety back and understand that we're here to support them and to help them. And one of the things I hear a lot is, well, it's just stuff. But you know what? It isn't just stuff. It's so much more than just stuff that you lose when you lose your home. And so I think we all really need to be careful to choose our words appropriately when we're talking to people who have lost everything. And I know I'm going to really try hard to make sure that I am helpful and thoughtful in the way that I respond to this. And I know you all will too. And the other thing I think people are facing now is this sort of chronic problem of everybody is underinsured. And that compounds problem on top of problem. So I would actually encourage all of you to take a look at your insurance, because you all are probably underinsured too. And we found out with this fire that none of us are immune from this kind of thing happening in our community. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative Mobley. Thank you, members. Seeing no further announcements or introductions, the next order of business is consideration of resolutions. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of House Resolution 1001. Oh, all right. Actually, I was wrong. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to proceed out of order for the immediate consideration of House Joint Resolution 1003.
Seeing no objection, we will proceed out of order for House Joint Resolution 1003. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of House Joint Resolution 1003.
House Joint Resolution 10003 by Representatives Ricks and Exum, also Senators Buckner and Fields, concerning the commemoration of the birthday of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr.
Representative Ricks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We moved that HJR 22-1003 and asked that it be read at length.
Has been properly moved. Mr. Schiebel.
Whereas the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. was born in Atlanta, Georgia on January 15, 1929, graduated from Morehouse College with a Bachelor of Arts degree in 1948, graduated from Crozer Theological Seminary in 1951, and received a PhD from Boston University in 1955. And whereas Reverend Dr. King's faith, resiliency, and commitment to justice became known worldwide through his speeches, writings, and actions. And whereas Reverend Dr. King declared that the moral responsibility to aid the oppressed did not stop at the edge of his street, town, or state, when he wrote, "I cannot sit idly by in Atlanta and not be concerned about what happens in Birmingham. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." And whereas Reverend Dr. King withstood attacks on his home and family, among numerous other threats and setbacks, standing firm in his conviction that although the arc of the moral universe is long, it bends towards justice. And whereas Reverend Dr. King led the Montgomery bus boycott, a 13-month protest that began in 1955 against the segregated city bus lines, and whereas the Montgomery bus boycott led to the integration of the Montgomery city bus system and is widely credited as the beginning of the civil rights movement in America. And whereas in 1957, Reverend Dr. King was elected president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, an organization formed to provide leadership for the burgeoning civil rights movement. And whereas between 1957 and 1968, Reverend Dr. King spoke more than 2,500 times, wrote 5 books as well as numerous articles, led protests, helped register African American voters, was arrested more than 20 times, was awarded 5 honorary degrees, was named Man of the Year by Time magazine, and became the symbolic leader of the African American community as well as a world figure. And whereas on August 28, 1963, Reverend Dr. King directed the March on Washington, wherein more than 200,000 Americans gathered in the name of equality and civil rights, and which culminated in Reverend Dr. King's historic I Have a Dream speech. And whereas the leadership of Reverend Dr. King was instrumental in bringing about landmark legislation such as the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibited segregation in public accommodations and facilities and banned discrimination based on race, color, or national origin, and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which eliminated remaining legal barriers to voting for disenfranchised African American voters. And whereas in 1964, Reverend Dr. King was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his tireless and selfless work in the pursuit of justice for African Americans and other oppressed people in America. And whereas Reverend Dr. King's 13 years of nonviolent leadership ended abruptly and tragically when on April 4th, 1968, he was assassinated while standing on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee. And whereas Reverend Dr. King's life and work continue to echo in our lives as we strive to reach the lofty goal he set when he said, "Let us hope that the dark clouds of racial prejudice will soon pass away and the deep fog of misunderstanding will be lifted from our fear-drenched communities. And in some not too distant tomorrow, the radiant stars of love and brotherhood will shine over our great nation with all their scintillating beauty." And whereas the celebration of Martin Luther King Jr. Day in Colorado was championed by Representative Wilma Webb, who sponsored the legislation creating the holiday, and on April 4th, 1985, Colorado Governor Dick Lamm signed the bill into law. And whereas Colorado's enactment of the holiday and the annual parade, emerging of the words march and parade, predated the federal holiday designation, and the first celebration in Colorado was on January 20th, 1986. And whereas Reverend Dr. King's birthday is a federal holiday in the United States and a state holiday in the state of Colorado, which is celebrated each year on the third Monday in January. And whereas on Monday, January 17th, 2022, we celebrate the 36th anniversary of Reverend Dr. King's holiday. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the 73rd General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the Senate concurring herein, that we, the members of the Colorado General Assembly, hereby encourage appropriate observances, ceremonies, and activities to commemorate the federal and state legal holiday honoring the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King throughout all cities, towns, counties, school districts, and local governments within Colorado.
Representative Ricks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We ask that the morning roll. Oh, speeches first. Okay, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last year, as this body honored the legacy of Martin Luther King, I gave my first speech on the floor of the House of Representatives. I shared with you all how I did not think that a woman like me could have come to serve in a place like this without the labor, the sacrifice, and the vision of Dr. King and his contemporaries who fought for civil rights. I told you in many ways my own story embodies the change that Dr. King fought so hard to bring about. Today, as we once again come together to celebrate the monumental legacy of Reverend King, I'd like to touch on an area of Dr. King's dream that I feel we are falling well short of achieving. I'm speaking, of course, of his fight to secure voting rights for people of color and push back against efforts to block access to the ballot. Today, 57 years after Dr. King marched in Selma, Alabama, to put pressure on the United States Congress and President Johnson to pass the Voting Rights Act, we find ourselves once again fighting ardently to uphold, promote, and expand voting rights. This historical moment reminds us that the struggle for justice is ever evolving, especially when it comes to the issue of systemic oppression. One of our great leaders in the fight for more just electoral systems and an inheritor of Dr. King's legacy was Lani Guinier, a brilliant Black educator, scholar, and civil rights lawyer. As a member of the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund, Guinier was central to the extension of Voting Rights Act in 1982. Her scholarship expanded our notions of what constitutes truly representative democracy, reminding us that merely having a vote It is not enough to overcome systemic biases that disenfranchise minorities. When Grenier was working on protecting the Voting Rights Act in 1980s, she understood that the nation was in the midst of a counter-revolution on civil rights. It is impossible to ignore the resonance of this statement today. We lost Lani Grenier last Friday, but I commit to carrying on her legacy as we work to strengthen our democracy and root out discrimination. Today, as we honor the memory of Dr. King and his heroic efforts to advance voting rights, I ask you to join me in affirming your commitment to protect the right to vote, expand voter access, and broaden your conception of equality. However, we must not stop there. In truth, I'm tired of working so hard to merely maintain the gains that we have made as racial minorities in this country. It is no longer enough to simply preserve the status quo. Now is the time to reawaken the progressive spark that Dr. King ignited throughout our country. Let us harness the imaginative spirit of Dr. King and Lani Grenier, that they embodied as we collectively dream ourselves into a more just future. I leave you with one of the favorite quotes of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. In this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such a thing as being too late. There is no time for apathy or complacency. This is a time for vigorous and positive action. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Ricks. Representative Exum.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On August 6, 1965, President Lyndon Johnson signed into law the Voting Rights Act and called the day a triumph for freedom as huge as any victory has ever been won on any battlefield. The law came just 7 months after Dr. King launched the Southern Christian Leadership Conference campaign based in Selma, Alabama, with the aim of pressing Congress to pass such legislation. In Selma, King wrote, "We see a classic pattern of disenfranchisement, typical in the Southern Black Belt areas where Negroes are in the majority, in addition to facing literacy tests and poll taxes. African Americans in Selma and other Southern towns were intimidated, harassed, assaulted as they sought to register to vote." President Johnson introduced the Voting Rights Act that same month, with the outrage of Selma still fresh. In just over 4 months, Congress passed the bill. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 abolished literacy tests and also poll tax, as I'm holding up today. Wherever by clear objective standards, states and counties are using regulations or laws or tests to deny the right to vote, then they will be struck down. Dr. King called the law a great step toward removing all the remaining obstacles to the right to vote. But in 2013, the Supreme Court decision, Selma County versus Holder, gutted the major part of the Voting Rights Act, making it easier for states to begin passing voter suppression laws. And that's exactly what happened in several states across the country. 19 states, 34 laws were passed. Voter suppression laws, including one to criminalize and punish people who give food and water to people waiting in line to vote. If Dr. King was living today, he would say that that's not right, and he would step up and do something about it. But registering in Colorado has never been easier. In 2019, we passed a bill to automatically register to vote anyone who gets renew their driver's license unless a person chooses to opt out of it. Hundreds and thousands of eligible voters have been successfully added to the rolls since that program went live in 2020. And if you can't vote by mail, you can still vote in person on polling places. The option is still available. And thanks to everyone who does not choose to vote by mail, the lines of voters at polling places have never been shorter. We have a good voting system in Colorado with integrity. And that's why on Martin Luther King Day especially, we should commit ourselves to protecting it. We should follow the example of Dr. King and making sure everyone has a right to vote. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative Exum. We'll go to Majority. Let's go to Majority Leader Eskard. Do you mind explaining exactly what we're
Thank you,
gonna
Mr.
do?
Speaker. Members, we're not finished with this resolution. We're just going to go ahead and take the vote on it now so we can get the joint resolution over to the Senate, and we will just come right back into the rest of the moment. Thank you.
Is that cool with everybody? We'll pass the resolution, then keep discussing it. So it has been properly moved. The question before us is the adoption of House Resolution 1003. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Joint Resolution 1003 is adopted.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Ricks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We ask that the morning roll be added as co-sponsors.
Seeing no objection, the morning roll call will be added as co-sponsors. Okay, so if anyone else would like to speak to the resolution, Representative Judah.
Oh, you might have to undo. Sorry, 1 second, Mr. Speaker. Sorry. Sorry, girl. That was my fault. One of the quotes that sticks with me the most when I think about Dr. King is, in the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. And coming from a very marginalized group, I will say that the message and the tone that Dr. King sent and set for really the world, for me, meant that he was not a silent friend. And I think it's important to remember that his message was not just on our soil. This is something that I take to heart as a Palestinian, as a Muslim, and I look to all of you to be my friends, but not be silent when I need it. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative Judah. Representative, any other members want to speak on the resolution? Minority Leader McKean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I tell you guys sometimes when I'm opening a door, when I'm offering an arm to get over a puddle, that I grew up as the child of a Southern mother. And I say that because there's a gentility in the South that is an imbuement of my life. But the other side of that imbuement is that I have grown up with members of my family who struggled their entire lives to make sure that they were treated equally. And that's kind of an interesting thing. That entire stretch of my family lives from Atlanta all the way down to Savannah. And so those stories were very present in our childhood and going down to Bartow and seeing family and having this incredibly mixed family of people who said, you know, we took a really long time to be treated as equals. So it matters a lot to me when I stand here and remember my parents reminding me of these incredibly profound things that Martin Luther King Jr. told the world. And by incredibly profound, one was the bravery of saying them at a time when it was audacious. And I think that we cast ourselves forward at a time when we think, how could those words have been audacious? Because in this chamber, we are peers. We're equals. And to me, I think that's the progression of where we've gone. Martin Luther King was just a part of my life growing up, a part of the stories that my family told, but the lives that they lived. It is remarkable when we think of the legacy of a man, of a reverend, who, in just pursuing what he knew was right, touched the face of this world. And I think every year, I think this is a profound moment to stop and think about the legacy he left. Would we all be so fortunate to be so passionate, to be so articulate, to be so audacious, to touch the world and change it for the better for the future? Thank you for bringing this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Minority Leader McKean. Representative Weissman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And, you know, members, this has honestly always been a bit of a hard day to come down and speak on this resolution at the well, because we are all speaking about the memory of and in the shadow of one of the most significant people in our country in the 20th century, maybe in the world. So I've always felt the weight of trying to measure up. It's probably just appropriate to note that, you know, maybe none of us ever will. When the resolution was being read this morning, some of the details about Dr. King's life were really hitting me. You know, again, finishing a PhD at age 26, doing the math right, and then those 13 years and just some of the things that we heard about in the resolution and that we all know more about, from 1955 to 1968. Astonishing. Absolutely astonishing. The leadership role of Dr. King in that time in our history. In years past, you know, you can find this online in an MP3. I've listened to the entire speech. It's about 16 or 17 minutes. Maybe the most consequential speech in the entirety of the 20th century for the moment that it represented, for the way that it captured everything that had happened up to that point, and the way that it galvanized so much that then went into motion after that point, some of which we just heard about. But what I think is particularly on my mind in terms of what Dr. King has said, what's particularly on my mind this year, particularly in the times that we've all been coming through, are the words that my colleague from Aurora already alluded to, the fierce urgency of now. In 1963, Dr. King said, "We have come to this hallowed spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now." So we must focus on what Dr. King was there to achieve. The ability to vote and participate in decisions that are made in this country and to elect people who make those decisions. But I think it's equally important to note what Dr. King had to say to us then and now about the when and also the how, and not just the what. And the when is now, with that fierce urgency, or at least as close to it as we can manage. Because to wait, which is the opposite of now, is a kind of privilege. And it is a privilege that not everybody has in equal measure. So when people struggle to afford housing, let's remember the fierce urgency of now. When our healthcare workers are struggling, as we all know that they are, let's remember the fierce urgency of now. Or when our teachers are struggling in ways that we've all alluded to here just in the last few days, let's remember the fierce urgency of now. Or when gains that have been made in this state and in other states concerning the franchise are called into question, let's remember the fierce urgency of now. 1963, Dr. King went on to say more about how in connection with when. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. And that registers even more loudly with me now than it has in the past. Because we find ourselves in an increasingly polarized time. I think we all feel that. Contest about values is always okay. That's what it means to be in a diverse, sometimes fractious country with a representative system. Contest over vision is okay. We talked about that the other day. But what is not okay is demonization and otherization. We can't cross the line from a healthy contest to unhealthy other. Dr. King knew too well where that goes. History, in other ways, has taught us far too much about where that goes for us to forget those lessons. So as we do our work here, this year, I hope that we all remember that. We're all people of strong passion, or we wouldn't be here. I'm a person of strong passion. I don't apologize for that. But I'm going to hold myself to that so that we don't fall into the darker part of human nature as we are here to advocate for what we believe in and to right wrongs and to seek justice. I think that is how we stay true to the legacy of Dr. King. Thank you.
Representative Bockenfeld.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It's an honor to serve with you.
Honor to serve with you too, Representative Bockenfeld.
I grew up during an era of Dr. Martin Luther King, and in one of his most famous speeches, he said, "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but the content of their character." And we should always make sure that our policies today live up to that vision of Dr. Martin Luther King. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Bockenfeld. Madam Speaker Pro Tem, Representative Benavides.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members of the Latino caucus are going to be joining me up here, as well as the members. We have 3 members that are on the wall. So 2. Where's Monica? Oh, okay. All right. So every year, this is my 6th year in the legislature, and every year that I have been here, I've come up and spoken about Martin Luther King, because his work was a North Star in my life. But I wasn't going to do it this year because I didn't think it was necessary. I thought we all knew this. But last night, I watched something on TV. It was a special about Emmett Till. And it made me think, I do need to talk about this, and so does our caucus. For those of you that may not know, Emmett Till was a 14-year-old boy. He lived in Chicago, but he was visiting relatives in 1955 in the summer in Mississippi. He went into a little grocery store and he was accused of flirting or whistling with the white woman who, along with her husband, owned the grocery store. That night, the husband of the woman and another man abducted Emmett from his family's home. They admitted that. Then they beat him, and then they lynched him. And then they shot him at least 2 times in the head. And then they tied a fan around his neck. And then they threw him into the river. He was found a couple of days later, but he was no one could tell who he was. His head had swollen several times its size, and he was so grossly disfigured, no one knew that it was that young boy. Now, this wasn't an isolated incident. That's what's so horrific about this. Because in our country, lynchings were going on all the time for decades. And they took place with the unfortunate regularity that it had become a national pastime for people to go to a lynching and to have their picture taken with the, in quotes, strange fruit that was hanging from the trees. And then they would send these pictures as postcards to their family members and friends who had not been there. But Emmett Till's death was different. It was different because this was in 1955. It was in my lifetime. It was in some of your lifetimes. And Emmett Till was just a 14-year-old boy. But this was also different because of the strength and courage of Emmett Till's mother, Mamie Till Mosley. You can imagine, this is her only child, and you can imagine the grief. But despite her grief, she wanted the world to see what had happened to her son. After the two men were acquitted, she held an open casket funeral in Chicago, and tens of thousands of people attended. And she wanted them to see the unspeakable violence that this child had endured. She went so far as to have his photographs taken in the casket, and it was put in a national magazine so it would not be forgotten, so everyone could see it. And the country was aghast at what had happened. Besides all that, though, the two men were acquitted by an all-white jury. But more interesting, and I bring this up because we make laws, and that was under the laws in that state. A year later, the two men were paid to do a story for Look magazine, and they admitted they had killed him. They admitted to it, but nothing could happen because of double jeopardy. That event, it's said to have been one of the primary events that was the catalyst that galvanized the civil rights movement. Martin Luther King was 26 years old when this happened. And when he moved forward with the civil rights movement, he spoke about Emmett Till's death throughout his speeches, throughout his lifetime. This was an important event in the civil rights movement. So when I watched that, I thought of the parallels today. The murders of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery. They were the catalysts for the historic moment that we find ourselves in. These were not the first murders of their kind, but it was the first time we, each of us, saw every excruciating detail of what happened to Ahmaud Arbery, of what happened to George Floyd. There was no denying it for any of us. And here in Colorado, we saw Elijah McClain. He was a young man with no record. He was never charged, even that night, for any crime. He wasn't even being stopped for a crime, but he was stopped, and he was murdered. That young man was a good person. He had a loving family who, is surprising to me at 23 years old, in your free time, you go and play violin at the animal shelter to soothe the animals. That's who Elijah McClain was. And that's why it struck such a note here and throughout our country. And Martin Luther King never backed off of a challenge, and we also should not. Criminal justice is a priority to all the groups in this building this year. We heard it in the speeches the last 2 days. But as we ponder criminal justice measures in this session, in this chamber, We must balance fear with justice. Any measure that we pass must protect all people, so no one is afraid to live in our state. We cannot rely on failed policies like broken windows theory of policing or on zero tolerance. Those don't work, and they really are aimed very specifically at people of color, at the homeless, at the poor. We cannot make the same mistakes.
Adrian, let's keep it to the Representative Benavides. Let's make sure we keep it to the resolution.
We have to move policing policies forward that protect all people and that not ignore that, especially when we as members of the Latino and Black caucus speak about these issues, it's based on a history that has been lived by ourselves, by our ancestors. We will seek to uphold Martin Luther King's words, injustice anywhere is a threat to injustice everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem. Representative Gray.
Just briefly, I wanted to talk a little bit about the quote from Dr. King about he wanting his children to be judged by not by the color of their skin, but the content of their character. And I just want to take a minute to say that's not the world that we live in right now, and we need to go ahead and admit it. Based on the civil rights movement, we made discrimination based on race formally illegal. We also need to stand here and recognize that not just in criminal justice, but definitely in criminal justice, but in areas all the way across society, that's not the world we live in right now. When you talk about education, when you want to talk about housing, when you want to talk about health care, there are not equal outcomes based on race right now, and they are based on race. So we can write the laws that we want to write, but we also build programs around here. And so if we believe in that quote, we need to think about it every day. It is not true that just because somebody wrote a law that says you should be treated equally because of race, that people of different races are being treated equally right now. It's not true. And we can't stand here and pretend that it is. We have data. We can get you the data. Like, we have data, but it is not true that there are equal outcomes right now. There are not. And those outcomes are based in the very fundamental racism that Dr. King fought against. He made a lot of progress. He worked with a lot of people to do it. The roots of that still exist today. Some of the stems have been pulled off. The roots are still there right now. If you are a black person in this country right now, your likely outcomes when it comes to healthcare, education, criminal justice, housing are significantly lower. And that's not me making that up. There's data, we can show it to you. But we need to not pretend that that dream has been achieved. That people are, how they're treated in this country right now is based on the content of their character, not the color of their skin. The color of your skin still matters in this country right now. So what we need to do is not just, Jim Wilson isn't here right now, but Jim Wilson, when we would do resolutions, would come down regularly, and I'm going to sort of take up the banner for the moment at least, and he would come down and we'd give our speeches about resolutions, and he would come down and look everybody in the eye and say, now what? Good, congratulations on this resolution we did, but now what? And there's a huge now what left on this area. And we cannot consecrate Dr. King any more than he has been. We will, and we'll honor his legacy, and we'll celebrate him on Monday. But I'm of the Jim Wilson persuasion. Now what? How do we get to that dream? Because we cannot, as much as Dr. King had a dream that people will be judged by the content of their character and not the color of their skin, that's not the world that we live in right now. So I think we take this moment and we honor him and we honor his legacy. And then my question is, now what? What are we going to do to, in all areas of society, actually use the power that we have to try to make it a reality? Thank you very much.
Representative Herod, Representative Bacon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, members. I'll be brief.
I just want to acknowledge House District 8 and former Representative Wilma Webb, who fought to make sure that this day was a holiday for the people of Colorado. And when she sat here as the representative from House District 8, it should be clear that people did not want this resolution to pass. It was opposed for multiple years by members of both parties. Why? Because members felt like if they passed this resolution and this holiday into law, that it would be to the exclusion of the white people of the state of Colorado. That simply wasn't the case. As we know, and as we've seen here today, we celebrate this holiday together. Black, white, brown, indigenous, Asian, LGBTQ, and straight. We celebrate this holiday together, and it means something for the people of Colorado. It means something for Black students like those who are sitting here today to see that their history is being acknowledged and that our great heroes like Dr. King have a special day in their honor. Dr. King did have a dream, and it lives on through the King Foundation. He had a dream that was centered on the prosperity of Black people, Black children, Black men, Black women, Black people. But it wasn't to the exclusion of white people, of brown people, of Asian people, and of indigenous people. In fact, his dream for Black workers has been used as a basis for the movement, for the labor movement, as we've seen here just in Colorado today, for the farm workers movement, as they joined arms together and fought in solidarity for workers, for an education system that's just for Black people, but also just for all kids. That's the dream. And we're not there yet. We have so much more work to do to make sure that the dream that Dr. King had for the legacy and the reality of Black people is achieved. But make no mistake, when we center Black voices, Black people, and Black struggle, it's not to the exception of white people, of brown people, of indigenous people, of Asian people, of any people. It's inclusive. It's inclusive. So as Dr. King talked about his Black children playing with white children, that too is a dream shared by me, by members of the Black Caucus, and I hope this entire body. But it's not to take away the fact that those Black children are still Black. His message was not a colorblind message. It was centered on the experience that he had. And we must continue on with that legacy. And let's not forget, as we think of this day of action on Monday, that we celebrate the good works and the good speeches of Dr. King, but we must also acknowledge that he was assassinated and murdered for standing up for justice for Black people. We cannot let that go in vain. So as we center our work, and we always center our work in this great body now, with this being one of the lead resolutions for the House and the Senate, I hope that we can take that spirit on into the work that we do. I hope that we can think of how the policies we create lift up, yes, Black people, but also all of Coloradans. And I hope that we can lead with the same leadership that Dr. King kept centered, which was one of faith and a message of love. Thank you, and I look forward to having this session with you all.
Thank you, Representative Herod. Representative Bacon.
Thank you. As we close, I'd like to share some reflections that were really important to Dr. King as the heart of his message, particularly around nonviolence. Dr. King was often celebrated for this, and as we read this resolution last year, I recall many of us talking about the impact Dr. King had on their lives, and many of us talking about the impact of the steps he took towards nonviolence. I also heard a lot of you share about the burden of what it feels like to carry the weight of fighting for justice with being willing to put your bodies on the line, whether it's for freedom or in the fight for this country. And to think that a man of 38 was willing to do that, I hope that is something that we don't forget in this moment. But in his celebration, we talk about his meanings behind the nonviolent work. In his letters from a Birmingham jail, he talked about this approach. He understood the Black nationalism efforts, and he said there's nothing more dangerous than to build a society with a large segment of people in that society who feel that they have no stake in it, who feel that they have nothing to lose. People who have a stake in their society protect that society, but when they don't have it, they unconsciously want to destroy it. But in the South, where violence took place against Black bodies, even with cameras rolling, he still had to take very measured risks to ensure that the community that he served would be safe. But more importantly, he chose nonviolence, or rather, direct actions of nonviolence, because those direct actions seek to create such a crisis and establish such creative tension that a community that has consistently refused to negotiate is forced to confront the issue, not the behavior, so that it can no longer be ignored. The African American community, once they crossed the ocean and were cut off from their parents, once their blood was mixed with their captors and those who took them in on indigenous lands, they made this country ours. And he knew, and the people who marched with him knew, that we should be able to fight for our place. But Dr. King also recognized the miracle that is the United States, that a nation could be kept together by words of shared values. Democracy requires diversity, and diversity requires democracy, managing our differences and shaping our actions to keep us collectively moving forward. From democracy comes tension. Democracy does not allow for the denial of who one is, their history, their pain, for the pain and the fear is what keeps us moving forward. Without it and its acknowledgement, we're doomed to repeat the past. The best ideas come from this tension when we are pushed. The constructive nonviolent tension, he says, is necessary for growth. Kind of tension in society that will help men rise from the dark depths of prejudice and racism to the majestic heights of understanding and brotherhood. Since our founding, we have all chosen America, the words, fighting and pushing to become this more perfect union. From the First Amendment, where we chose to not be a theocracy, to the Equal Rights Amendments, where we chose to commit that all people, regardless of their skin color, their nationality, and those differences, would be treated equal. We chose not our singular interests or identities, but rather our country. In this letter, Dr. King says, one day the South will know that when these disinherited children of God sat down at lunch counters, they were in reality standing up for the best in the American dream and the most sacred values of our Judeo-Christian heritage. It's not a taking, but there's room at the table. In this room today, we've heard from Representative Exum to myself, and over our generations, we have continued to fight and continue to see progress, but we know that the work is not done. And as much as we like to believe that we have been deliberate in solving these injustices, we have young people who, through their eyes, know that we need to continue to work for them and that they need to continue work for themselves. So the last quote I'll end with from the letters, in the themes of what we've heard today, is to talking about the tensions between being a moderate when it comes to our issues. I have reached almost the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in the stride toward freedom is not the white citizen's counselor or the Ku Klux Klanner, but the moderate who's more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice, who constantly says, I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I can't agree with your methods of direct action, who paternalistically feels that he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by the myth of time, and who constantly advises the Negro to wait until a more convenient season. Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than the absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection. So again, I hope that we do not walk away from this tension. We all have something to give to maintain this miracle that is these United States. I want to acknowledge our young people who, with their own eyes, are not only watching us today, but have been watching and marching in this world to find their place. And again, across these generations, I would like if everyone would stand and acknowledge young ladies from the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Early College in Denver, Colorado, who have said to the world, to know justice is to know peace, who have started a podcast, changed curriculum, been featured on Good Morning America, so that they can be seen in this world and take their place as one of our neighbors and one of our leaders. Please welcome Alana Mitchell, Kalia Yazar, Danny Mitchell, Janelle Nanga, Kanadi Jackson, Sierra Noel, Atalia Lee. Please welcome these young ladies. Thank you. At Denver Public Schools, they worked to ensure their faces and their voices were included in curriculum. And so we would like to acknowledge Denver Public Schools, Tamara Acevedo, Theo Shaw, and Kiara Roberts, their teacher and the supporter of their podcast, which you can find online. Thank you.
I'd also like to acknowledge, Mr. Speaker. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Ricks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to acknowledge Sarah Woodson, who is the Political Action Chair of the NAACP in Denver, and also to thank Kalina Lean Lewis for singing the Negro Spiritual today, Lift Every Voice and Sing.
Welcome. Okay, thank you all. We, since we've had voted on that resolution, we'll move forward with the resolutions on the calendar. So, Mr. Schiebel, please, please read the title to HR 1001.
House Resolution 1001 by Representative Mullica concerning employees and positions for the House of Representatives convened in the in the second regular session of the 73rd General Assembly.
Representative Mullica.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll preface this with, members, we have some amazing staff that help us get the work of the people done every single day. And so with that, Mr. Speaker, I move H.R. 22-1001 and ask that it be adopted. This is a resolution naming employees to House positions.
Wonderful. That has been properly moved. Is there further discussion? Mr. Minority Leader McKeon.
Thank you very much. Folks, we know this, but I think it needs to be said out loud. I would ask that you all rise and thank our staff for actually letting us get our jobs done. We know it, we tell them, but at the beginning of every session, we get this moment to codify it, but also to publicly say we cannot do the work of the people without the folks who do all the work of the people. And it has been amazing. I don't know that you do know this, but after we do all our stuff up here and we do, the front desk does all their work, the new Mr. Gregorio, Mr. Scheibel does his reading and everything else that we do, all of our stuff goes back in this back office, back to the enrolling room. And you don't realize that the enrolling room has been run by 2 people instead of 3 for 2 years. And they have done everything that was needed to be done. They got it out. Our former reader, Connor Randall, has been back there working his heart out. This year they have 3 employees again. They're going to be able to actually do the work and make sure that everything gets done just like they did before, but finally with a full staff. And that is thanks to our chief clerk, Robin Jones, to his leadership of this staff. It's remarkable. We have worked so closely with them, and it is just a partnership in love for this institution. So a big thank you. Thank you for rising. These folks do everything for us, and we thank them.
Thank you, Minority Leader McKean. The next order of business is the adoption of the resolution. Is there objection to a voice vote? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Resolution 1001. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Resolution 1001 is adopted. Representative Molka, do you want to ask for co-sponsors? Or do we want to open up the machine for co-sponsors? Either way. Representative Molka.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask that the current roll call be added as co-sponsors.
Seeing no objection, today's roll call will be added as co-sponsors. Mr. Scheibel, please read the title to Senate Joint Resolution 001.
Senate Joint Resolution 001 by Senator Fenberg, also Representative Mollica, concerning the officers and employees of the second regular session of the 73rd General Assembly.
Representative Mollica.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move SJR 22-001 and ask that it be adopted. This is the resolution that sets the pay ranges for House and Senate employees.
Wonderful. Is there any further discussion on Senate Joint Resolution 1? Seeing none, is there objection to a voice vote of Senate Joint Resolution 1? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Joint Resolution 1. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Joint Resolution 1 is adopted. Representative Molka.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that today's roll call be added as co-sponsors.
Wonderful. Seeing no objection, today's roll call will be added as co-sponsors. Now, we want to do the oath of office for the staff. So, will the staff please gather in the well to receive their oath? This is always a great moment in session. All right, come on down.
Why are you here? I got a conceptual amendment. Just one name. Anyone with the initials.
Okay, is everyone gathered? This is like one of the best moments of opening session. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. Do solemnly swear that I will uphold the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Colorado, and that I will faithfully perform the duties of my office to the best of my knowledge and ability. So help me God. Congratulations. Thank you all for your service. Okay, there's one more item of business, it appears, and then we're out of here for the day. Mr. Scheibel, please read the title to House Resolution 1003.
House Resolution 1003 by Representative Esgar concerning the addition of a House rule authorizing the Speaker of the House of Representatives to promulgate regulation to facilitate a safe and healthy work environment and to protect vulnerable members of the House and other persons during a declared public health disaster emergency.
Assistant Majority Leader Gonzalez Gutierrez.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem. I move House Resolution 1003.
Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem. And members, I just wanted to come down and explain this resolution quickly. And we sent out the text of the resolution and then the regulations that would be promulgated. Because of the changes around Joint Rule 44, all this is doing is covering the committee space of the House to make sure that people can be socially distanced in the committee rooms and that people are going to wear masks. So it's essentially keeping us up to date with where we were last year. No more than that, no additions to that. I think I've made a commitment to Representative Mr. Minority Leader McKean to continue discussions as we move through this session on kind of where things are at. I'm committed to those discussions, and for the time being, this would just put us in place in terms of safety and protocols for where we were last year, minus being under Joint Rule 44. So I would urge your support.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Yes, Representative Luck. I need a chart up here. Please.
Thank you, Speaker Benavides, or Speaker Pro Tem Benavides. It's good to see you guys all again down here from the well. I know that this is quite a topic. The mask topic has divided many of our communities or divided our communities against each other. I will say many in my community, in my district, object to the idea of being told what medical treatments to pursue. This isn't a question of wanting to keep other people safe. It's not a question of, I guess what I say is people who decide not to wear a mask aren't choosing to put other people in harm's way. They're looking at a different set of facts, they're looking at a different set of arguments, and they're making the best decisions for themselves and their families based off of those sets of facts. And so I think this particular decision really does need to be vetted more fully by this body. There are those who would say that depriving our bodies of oxygen creates an unhealthy environment within our bodies, an unhealthy environment that then further weakens our own immune systems and makes us even more prone to illness. Moreover, if you look at the science, and there are scientific studies on this very question, some that are long-standing scientific studies that show that wearing masks is harmful to one's body. And so we need to understand that there is a risk. So then the next question becomes, does the risk get outweighed by the reward of not having those masks on, right? The reward of wearing those masks and allowing fatal in order to build herd immunity. There are just so many different perspectives out there, and depending on who you're listening to and how you're interpreting those facts, you may reach very reasonable conclusions as to what is in the best interest of your own health and the health of those around you. And so, in honor of freedom, in honor of liberty, in honor of the ability to say, not, I don't care about you and I want to put you at risk, right? That's not what so many of us who don't wear masks are saying. Even if that is what is being received, let me tell you from my heart of hearts, that's not what is being said. I would just ask that you would allow for my constituents to feel comfortable enough coming up here and sitting in committees and looking at you in the eye and sharing their hearts without feeling like they're going to be kept out. Many of them won't do that. And so then they'll end up on remote testimony, and we know how that is a diminished form of testimony so often because of technology and the spits and spurts of listening, right? Or if you're in a particular room and the echoes. And so please, I just do ask, allow for everybody to participate, allow for everybody to come. Don't discriminate against those who have said, in the interest of health, I have made this decision. Truly, please hear my heart. It's not, I don't wear a mask. It's true. But I don't wear a mask because I want to put you all at risk. I wear a mask because when I looked at the evidence, when I did the examination, and when I tried to wear a mask, all of the things, all of the evidence, including my own experiences, told me this is not good for me, and this is not good for those that I am around. And so I would just ask, if you have made a different decision, so be it. But allow each of us to make that decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Malika.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem. Members, there's two people in this room that have been on the front lines during this pandemic. I've been working in the ER. I've been taking care of COVID positive patients, and I see it every single day that I go in. I was working last week and we had no beds. We had no beds, and so I was taking ambulances to the waiting room, taking my patients off of a gurney and putting them in a chair in the waiting room. That's where we're at, members. That's where we're at. And listen, the science is clear. Masks help stop the spread of this virus. Let's think about this. Let's think pre-pandemic. When you went into surgery, if it was to get your knee fixed or if it was to get a stent in your heart, do you know what everyone wore in that room? Everyone wears a mask. And that's to protect you. That's to protect you as the patient. You know what I wore in the room when I would have a patient that would come in that had cancer in the ER? I wore a mask to protect that patient. So we can't say that we're changing things. The science has been clear. We've been using masks to help stop the spread of disease for years. And so this idea that we are infringing on somebody's rights or that we are doing something wrong, that's absurd. That's false. We are trying to put policies in place that will protect people, that will help stop the spread of this virus. We have a job to do in this building, to do the people's work, and that's what we're trying to do. But we also have a job to protect people, to protect the people that are coming into this building, to protect ourselves, to protect the staff. And that's what we're trying to do. There's no political statements here. That doesn't matter the letter next to your name. I don't want to see you get hurt. And I think that the majority of the people here, everyone here, wants the same thing. And we know that masks are a tool to help stop that. And it's sad to see that they're being politicized because it's not a political football. It's science, members. And science matters. Facts matter. And I'm telling you, I've lived it. I've seen it pre-pandemic. We need to do all that we can. Our hospitals are being overrun. People are getting sick. People are dying. And we need to do all that we can to protect them. And so please, let's not make masks into this political football. Let's follow the science. The science is clear. And let's get back to work.
Minority Leader McKean.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I truly don't think that this is politicized as much as it is when we have this kind of discussion. I think it comes down to how are we going to operate the people's house. And I think that it really does come down to how effectively can we navigate, not to my right honorable colleague's statement, to stop this virus, but to slow the spread of this virus. We know this is something we live with. We know now that we're moving from the pandemic stage to the endemic stage of what we're going to have from COVID. And so in many ways, we're sitting here saying, how do we get back to normal? And I would very much like to commend the speaker for the discussions that we've had about how do we return to normal in the best way possible, right? In the most conscious and and responsible way possible. And one of the things I really need to clear up is that this rule, I don't think is anyone's desire, it's certainly not mine, to come and have to codify by rule the power that we have to control the spaces of the House. I think that we do that. I think that that's our want, if you will, a W-O-N-T, that we have that authority to control those spaces. But I really need to make clear that nothing in this has anything to do with a member's ability to represent their constituents. We have a constitutional duty to be able to come here and do our work. And therefore, nothing in this rule can prohibit a member from coming into this room, coming into this building to do the work of the people. Nothing. Full stop. And so to describe it in that way, I think, one, alleviates some concerns. Are we going to create a situation that we may have seen in other bodies and other places? No. Our Constitution is very clear. You have to be able to come here and do your job. The other thing, and I think that it's worth noting, is that the desire to get the people's house back to as normal a position as possible is partly the will of all of us, but certainly part of our discussions, is let's make sure that we pay attention to where the rate of infection is, where those things are. In fact, I asked for an agenda item to our next exec committee to really talk about that. What are the parameters that we're going to be making these decisions by? Because I think we owe that to our constituents and to the public, so that they know when the work of the people's house will likely return to normal. What are we looking at? What are the baselines? I think that's very important. And it is not without input from Dr. Herlihy and other medical professionals. So one, alleviate your concerns. Nothing keeps you from coming here to do your job. The Constitution protects that, protects your constituents that way. And two, we desperately want to get things back to a baseline of normal, where people can come to this building and redress their government. That's incredibly important to everyone here. And so this rule change, as much as I don't want to have to do it by rule, I would much rather it just be, okay, we're going to pay attention to this and we're going to get back to normal when we can. But I think those elements are very important in this discussion.
Any further discussion? Representative Geithner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I can appreciate some of the comments that were made, and to Representative Mullick, this has become political. Through forces throughout society, right? And that's just where we are. And I can accept the fact that that's how it is. So as I look at this, and I can appreciate, Mr. Speaker, your comments about that it is, that there are limitations here. However, we work in this world where the word written on the paper carries the meaning that we intend to hopefully convey in policy. Sometimes you'll hear members talk about belts and suspenders, right? And I think this is a little bit of what that is. Mr. Speaker, I've already shared these with you, but I would like to move, or I do move, L001, and I ask that it be displayed.
Thank you. Just a second. We're going to bring it down to get it presented. Thank you. All right. It's been properly, the amendment has been properly moved and is on the screen, members. Representative Geithner, did you have more to say about the amendment?
Yeah, if you don't mind, if you don't mind, yes. So, members, simply what this says is it takes words and it puts it into policy so that it is clear. And so this one simply says the authority conferred on the Speaker under subsection A1 of this rule shall not include the authority to require, I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong one, shall not include the authority to require face coverings, vaccines, or vaccine passports. And the reason that I have this in here is a couple reasons, right? You'll remember we've already passed that we do have the ability for remote testimony, right? So members of the public have the ability to interface directly on policy as they would here in this building. So that is afforded to those that would be otherwise concerned about their safety or the safety of others, even if they just have symptoms, but they really do want to speak on policy. We've already adopted that. So that is there for the public to meet that need. Second, I'm looking at an article here from Colorado Public News, Colorado Public Radio News. It looks like it's dated December 10th. And it's an interview, and the title of it talks about Governor Polis says that it is not the state, or the state shouldn't tell people what to wear. I bring that up because this is already discussion that we are hearing here in Colorado, even from our governor, that we shouldn't be telling people what to wear. So that's my amendment, but at this point, I would also like to move a substitute amendment, which is L002.
Is that?
And I asked it to be displayed.
Okay. It's properly moved and it'll be displayed momentarily. Do you want to continue, Representative Geithner?
Yes. So L002, let me read that for you. There's a minor change to this one. The authority conferred on the speaker under subsection A1 of this rule shall not include the authority to acquire vaccines or vaccine passports. Of course, Mr. Speaker, I did hear you say that the intent of this rule would be basically to limit to face masks. So that I don't get in a position of a settled question, it was necessary for me to move a supplement amendment. And so that's the purpose of L002. When our governor says that we should not be imposing regulations, requirements in and around what folks should wear, I kind of see that also as, well, we shouldn't probably be telling them what to put in their bodies, and then certainly requiring some sort of a passport or mechanism to demonstrate that they have put something into their bodies. So the reason for this, because I think that intent, the written word needed in policy, is very much what we are here as policymakers to do. And so I will step out of the well. I'm not sure if there's any additional comments on either of these amendments, but I do appreciate the time.
Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem. And members, I would urge a no vote on this amendment. It is clear that, when we're talking about the House space, this is the space where we invite the public to come and hear their views. People come from all across the state to come and talk to us about the legislation that's before us. We've increased the opportunities by amending the rule from last year about remote participation for the public. But we also have staff. We have staff who come in here and who work on behalf of this institution, on behalf of the people of Colorado, and making sure that people are wearing masks in the committee space and making sure that people are socially distanced in the committee space, especially when the transmissibility of the Omicron variant is much higher than any other variant, seems common sense. And this just takes us back to where we were last year. I sent around a draft of the regulations because the regulations are what I'm saying are going to be in the regulations. And, when I first came into this body, I was reminded that all you have in this body is your word. And you have my word that what's in those regulations is what's going to be in those regulations. So there is no need for these amendments, and I would urge a no vote.
Representative Sandridge.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem. I stand in support of this amendment. Basically common sense here, and it's scientific. And I will also want to thank Representative Geithner for his leadership in defending us on this and taking the scientific approach. Thank you.
Representative Baisley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem. Just a quick reminder of some of the thought process that has gone before us. Less than a year ago, this body passed Senate Bill 21-142,
sponsored by 16 of the 20 Democrat senators, 31 of Democrat House representatives. This quote from that bill, Senate Bill 21-142, "Every person has a right to privacy with respect to personal health decisions free from coercion or interference from the government."
All right. Any further discussion on Representative Geithner?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, I figured since I was in the trend of offering quotes from our governor, here's another one. And this one looks like it might be dated November 1st, or at least that's the date that I have on this paper. But the emergency is over, according to Governor Jared Polis. Members, I urge a yes vote.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion on Amendment L002 to House Resolution 1003, is there objection to a voice vote? Seeing objection, yeah, great. Seeing objection, Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. All right, to the wall. Everyone ready? Representative Van Winkle.
Yes.
Representative Van Winkle votes yes. Representative Williams.
Yes.
Representative Williams votes yes. Representative Pico.
Yes.
Representative Pico votes yes. Representative Michelson-Janae.
No.
Representative Michelson-Janae votes no. Representative Exum.
No.
Representative Exum votes no. Representative Ortiz.
No.
Representative Ortiz votes no. Representative Valdez.
No.
Representative Valdez votes no. Representative Escar is excused, and Representative Williams did vote. I will say this is Mr. Schiebel's first recorded vote. Good job, Mr. Schiebel. Please close the machine. With 22 aye votes, 37 no votes, 5 excuse, and 1 vacancy, L001 to House Resolution 1003 is lost. Oh, L002, I'm sorry, is lost. Okay, that brings us to L001. Is there further discussion on L001? Seeing none, is there objection to a voice vote? Seeing objection to a voice vote, Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine, and members, please vote. The question before us is the adoption of L001 to House Resolution 1003. Okay, on the wall, Representative Van Winkle, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Van Winkle votes yes. Representative Williams, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Williams votes no. Representative Pico, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Pico votes yes. Representative Michelson-Janae, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Michelson-Janae votes no. Representative Exum, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Exum votes no. Representative Ortiz, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Ortiz votes no. Representative Valdez, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Valdez votes no. Representative Holtorf. Representative Holtorf. Great. Please close the machine. With 20 aye votes, 39 no votes, 5 excused, and 1 vacancy, Amendment L001 is lost to House Resolution 1003. We're back to the underlying resolution. Is there any further discussion? Representative Geithner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I think that, there is some language in there that may appear to, limit this particular resolution that we're voting on. I am actually having an amendment drafted now that would put a date, further define that. I don't know if we could take a minute. I mean, I'm happy to read this article that I had printed up here, but that's what's happening at the amendment desk. Just so that there's again, I'll use that phrase, some belts and suspenders specifically on this. So, Mr. Speaker, if you're comfortable with maybe another 2 minutes, or
how about the House staying in a brief recess? We'll save the people of Colorado. House will come back to order. Representative Geithner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the latitude. Members, I move L003, and I ask that it be displayed.
That has been properly moved and displayed. Representative Geithner.
So, members, this kind of brings us in line with, any other resolution that has some sort of an impact on the rule, limiting it to, the 73rd General Assembly. So, I would ask for support on L003.
Representative Ransom.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem, and I urge an aye vote on this amendment as well. Folks, I've been hearing from constituents for the last year and a half that are just concerned that we are extending and extending and extending the state of emergency. And I recognize that there have been new variants that have come through. I recognize that things are changing so fast. But at this point, for us to start establishing rules that could go on forever, I think is a mistake. I think we should really, as we've been hearing about belts and suspenders, let's put a time to end this new rule, because the body here will be able to change the rules and adopt new rules next year when we see what's going on then. So again, I just think that right now, to just put some belts and suspenders on this and just give some peace of mind to the people that are feeling subject to these rules would just be something that we can do for our constituents, for the people of the state of Colorado, and I urge an aye vote on L003.
Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem. And members, the rule already is limited to the health emergency that we're in. We did this for the rule around public participation. We limited it to just last session, and then we had to come back and amend it. But it worked great, and we knew it was going to work great. Because this is already tied to an end date, and this rule will go away, I don't think that this underlying amendment is needed. And since I don't think it's going to kind of bring support along from folks who are bringing it forward, again, it's not needed. I'm committed to having conversations throughout session about kind of where we find ourselves. I've made that commitment. We'll have a discussion at executive committee, but in terms of making sure that the public knows that they can come and speak to their leaders on issues that they care about and know that it's going to be as safe as possible, I would urge a no vote on this amendment.
Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. So I take the Speaker at his word. We've been talking about how we don't want these rules to continue to even the end of this session. That's part of a greater discussion. But really, truly, I've had questions from my members. Do we have to remember to come back next year in adopting rules as this body comes back together? And do we need to remember to get rid of a rule that we felt was not in the right place? So I support this amendment because I think that codifies this. However, I hope that these rules and this public health disaster emergency evaporate long before this, and that we can get back to the normal operation of this Capitol for the public to come in and speak to their government.
Representative Geithner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I do find it necessary. I think, we had floods in 2013, and certainly there's a fire now, and recently with the Marshall Fire. Some of these emergency orders are still in place. So I think this is a good piece of, or a good amendment to the resolution. And again, I would urge a yes vote on L003. And finally, just to conclude, again, even the governor has said that the emergency is over.
Luckily, is there any further discussion? Seeing none. The question, is there objection to a voice vote? Yep, great. Yep, lots of objection. Maybe I shouldn't have even asked. We could just move right into roll call vote. Okay, the question before us is the adoption of L003 to House Resolution 1003. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. Representative Van Winkle, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Van Winkle votes yes. Representative Williams, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Williams votes yes. Representative Pico, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Pico votes yes. Representative Michelson-Janae, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Michelson-Janae votes no. Representative Exum, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Exum votes no. Representative Ortiz, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Ortiz votes no. Representative Valdez, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Valdez votes no. Representative Gray's coming in. Representative Gray. Mr. Shebel, please close the machine. With 21 aye votes, 38 no votes, 5 excused, and 1 vacant, the L003 to House Resolution 1003 is lost. That could have been the first fine opportunity, Representative Gray, of 2022, but no worries. I think I'm still waiting on your fine and Representative Mullica's fine from last year. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. All right. Is there any further discussion on the underlying resolution? Seeing none, is there objection to a voice vote of the underlying resolution? Objection is noted. The question before us is the adoption of House Resolution 1003. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. Representative Van Winkle, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Van Winkle votes no. Representative Williams, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Williams votes no. Representative Pico, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Pico votes no. Representative Michelson-Janae, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Michelson-Janae votes yes. Representative Exum, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Exum votes yes. Representative Ortiz, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ortiz votes yes. Representative Valdez, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Valdez votes yes. Please close the machine. With 37 aye votes, 22 no votes, and 5 excused, House Resolution 1003 is adopted. Co-sponsors. I've seen that move before. Representative Michelson-Janae, Representative Ortiz, Representative Exum, co-sponsor. All right, please close the machine. Madam Assistant Majority Leader Gonzalez-Gutierrez.
Okay, members, can you hear me? Okay, good, because I have some important information. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your finalized bills will be delivered to the front desk for introduction unless you ask legal services to deliver the bill to you instead. If you wish to have a bill delivered directly to you instead of the front desk, you must have that bill completely finalized with your legal services drafter by 5 p.m. next Monday. If you are not available to finalize your bill on Monday, due to the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, you must finalize your bill by 5 p.m. this Friday, today, January 14th. If your bill is delivered to you, don't forget to turn it into the front desk no later than 4:30 p.m. on Tuesday, the 18th in the afternoon. There's more, members. Really important information here. Secondly, once a bill is delivered to the front desk or to you for introduction, it should not be returned to legal services for changes. Please make those changes by amendment after it is introduced. Last, please don't return bills that are delivered for introduction to legal services to add co-sponsors. Co-sponsors can be added by the House front desk or enrolling room staff before your bill is sent to the printer. If you have questions about adding co-sponsors after your bill is delivered to you, please contact the House front desk staff. The legal services staff thanks you very much for listening to this important announcement and following. Also, the House will not be in session on Monday in observance of the Martin Luther King Jr. Day holiday, and that's Monday, January 17th. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I move that the House stand in recess until later today.
That's fine, unless we have additional announcements and introductions. I know Representative Luck is coming down. We'll go to Representative Herod.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, on behalf of the Black Caucus and House District 8, we do welcome you all to join us at the Parade on Monday in honor of Dr. King. We kick off from Manual High School, from the MLK statue at City Park at 9:30. And then, for all of our Western fans, we have the Black Rodeo on Monday night as well. The Black Caucus will be participating at the Western Stock Show. If you are interested, would like a ticket for yourself or your family, please speak with Senator Coleman, who is coordinating that. But here's your chance to see us all in our Western gear and getting down with the Cowboys. We welcome you to join us.
Thanks so much, Representative Harrod. Representative Judah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For the folks in Aurora or people who want to join the Aurora delegation, we would like to invite you to join the community as we prepare packages and distribute 1,400 meals on MLK Day. Operations will begin at 10 o'clock and go until 4. Many people will probably join after the parade. There will be a press conference at the MLK Library on Colfax in Aurora at 2 p.m. Where we would distribute resources to community members as well. And then we will launch the meal teams from the Dayton Street Opportunity Center. So we'll also be sending teams out to do that. Please join us. We'd love to have you.
Representative Weissman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, I just wanted to further sort of lift up the significance of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day in Aurora. All the issues we spoke of earlier this morning about the fight for equality, disparities in access to things like voting, they've long been salient in Aurora, which is why the holiday is so significant to us. We don't celebrate for a day. We've had events going on for more than a week, reaching back to last weekend. Obviously, Monday is the culmination. We have a library branch named after Dr. King, outside of which is a statue made in the honor of Dr. King. If you go to the city website, you'll find information on everything that's going to be going on throughout the weekend leading up to Monday. And traditionally, a lot of folks mark our observance and then join the bigger parade in Denver, as was alluded to. We just encourage everyone to check it out. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Weissman. Representative Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today is the 495th Friday since my son Alex was murdered in the Aurora Theater Massacre, along with 11 others. Since that date, 2 of Alex's co-workers who were with him that day have taken their own lives. Most recently, it was a female Army Iraq War veteran whose memorial I will be attending next week. Sadly, I don't know how others are doing, but the pain continues from row 12 where Alex was sitting.
Thank you, Representative Sullivan. Representative Luck.
Thank you, Speaker Garnett. So I'm back, it's Friday, and I want to continue the tradition. I missed you all, if you can believe that or not. I did. It's interesting when I went back home and I would meet with my constituents, they would say, oh, what is it like being in that building? We're from the rural communities, and so being in Denver is already a hardship for many, even to contemplate. And then, government, that's a whole other level of intensity. And I would say, no, actually, I love being in that place. I feel the Lord's good pleasure when I'm in there, and I love being with all of you. And I just want to reiterate that this year. By doing something a little bit different, I'm still going to affirm the reality of who you all are, of who we all are. Despite our differences, despite our different ways of interpreting the world, there is such value in each one of us. And so I've gotten permission actually to post this along with this at the back of the room. And so what is this? It is a poem that I had in my classroom. It says, I know something good about you. Wouldn't this old world be better if the folks we meet would say, I know something good about you, and treat us just that way? Wouldn't it be fine and dandy if each hand clasp, fond and true, carried with it this assurance, I know something good about you? Wouldn't life be lots more happy if the good that's in us all were the only thing about us that folks bothered to recall? Wouldn't life be lots more happy if we praised the good we see, for there's such a lot of goodness in the worst of you and me. And so I have these little cards, and if you see one of your colleagues or a member of our staff that has done something that is praiseworthy, write a note, put it in the basket, and I'll be checking. This week, I wanted to honor someone for being exceedingly helpful to me all last session, and then even again this week. He is over there at the door, but Representative Snyder has helped me immeasurably in all kinds of ways navigate this room, and so I just want to honor him for that helpfulness. And next week, since it is Friday, on Friday is National Hug Day, I'm going to look for someone who displays compassion. So if you guys see anybody being compassionate, feel free to write a note and put it in there. But as we go this weekend and as we do all of these wonderful things to honor a man who stood strongly for virtue and for justice, just know that you are loved and amazing, worthy and adored, and I'm so glad that I've gotten to see you now.
Thank you, Representative Luck. Representative Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of State Veterans Military Affairs or State Civic Military and Veterans Affairs, our SMART Committee hearing is Tuesday upon adjournment in the old Supreme Court.
Any further announcements or introductions? See none. I want to just say thanks, everybody, for a great week. Have a wonderful weekend celebrating the great man, Martin Luther King. And with that, Assistant Majority Leader Gonzalez Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House stand in recess until later today.
Seeing no objection, the House will stand in recess until later today.